Hello everyone, Eric here, and welcome back to my computational science video tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at creating functions in Python. So I'm calling this user functions because we're going to be creating our own functions. Alright, so I have my PyCharm up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just creating a new Python function. A new file, by right-clicking on where it says Python and then going over under New Python File. I'm just going to call it PyFunctions. Just a generic name. I'm not really going to be doing anything too in-depth. So in Python, when we want to create a new function, we have to define a new function. We do that with a keyword called def. And anything we put after the def is going to be the name of our function. So maybe I'm going to call it area of triangle. And when we want the area of the triangle, we're going to have the base and the height. Oops. I don't know why I wrote and there. Just thinking silly. So I have the base and the height. Now once we've defined our function and our prototype for what it's going to look like, we need to indicate that there are going to be a few lines of code here. So I'm going to use a colon to indicate that, hey, as long as we're indented after this, that means we're in this function. Now by default, PyCharm will indent 4. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4. We are indented 4 spaces. You should always use spaces, and 4 spaces is the Python standard. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to compute the area of a triangle. So I'm going to say area equals 1/2. So I'm going to say 0.5 times base times height. And then we will just return the area. And what this means is our function is going to do some computations, and that's what line 4 does. And then it's going to return a result. And we can make this more complicated if we want. So this is just a very quick way we can sort of check our function out. So if we wanted to, we could do something like print the area of a triangle is, and then I'm just going to compute an area here. So I'm just going to say area of triangle, and let's say it has a base of 4 and a height of 5. Okay, so we're going to put these in. Now I want to run my program. I'm going to do that by just right-clicking. I'm going to run my PyFunctions, and I'll say the area of a triangle is 10. So 1/2 of 4 is 2 times 5 is 10. That's the correct result. Alright, so it's very simple, I think, to make our own little custom functions. We just have to remember to use the colon. So I'm going to show just another quick function. It's just going to be a string function. And we're going to give it some sort of name. And it's going to end up printing to the screen. It's basically going to say someone's name. And I'm just going to say that name is an awesome person. Put a few exclamation points so we know it's true. So here I'm able to define a string function where we're going to give it a string and it's going to print that out. And what we can do is we can do something like string function. I'm just going to say Steve. You know, maybe Steve from Minecraft, or if you have a friend named Steve, it could be that person. I'm going to run the program again. Then here we can see that it's printing out that Steve is an awesome person. Alright, it looks like by default it does put a space between them, so I don't need this space here. We can play with this function. We can see what happens if I give my function something that is not a string. What if I give it the number 1.1? Alright, now it's going to say that 1.1 is an awesome person. So in our string function, we might want to check, hey, let's make sure that this is a string. And we're going to do that by using a function called assert, and we're going to use the type function we've talked about before. So I can use the assert, and I can say we're going to assert that something is true. And what we want to assert is true. So we want to assert that name is of type string. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a special function called isInstance. And in the isInstance is going to take 2 inputs. The first input is going to be the variable we want to check. And we want to check that it's an instance of type of a string. Now what I'm doing here is if we look at the type of like the empty single quotes, the empty single quotes is just an empty string. So the type of the empty single quotes is going to be a string. And it's a way to say that we want to make sure that name is of the same type as a string. Now, this could potentially run into some errors, like if someone's sending a Unicode string or something like that. But this is kind of a nice way to check that we're not getting a number. So what we can do is we can run our program now, and we're going to get an error, and it's going to say, hey, we can't put 1.1 into it. Now, if you don't want to use these assert functions, you can remove them. I can comment this out and have it work, because I really don't care if it works, but I did want to show you how we can use assert to kind of control what kind of input we're getting. You can imagine if we're doing base times height, we might get something very weird if we were to give it a string or something like that. But the basic idea of a function is that we're going to give it a def statement, and we're going to have a function name. Then we're going to have input 1, input 2, and so on. And then we can use those. We can, say something like b equals in1 plus in2, c equals in1 times in2, d equals in1 over in2. And we can have multiple lines of code, and then we can return b plus C plus D. So we can create sophisticated and advanced functions, and it's a really good idea to use functions to kind of simplify your code. So these are just a few examples of how we can create a function in Python. And as you're doing problems, I think it'll be kind of clear what we can do with them. It's very straightforward the way they work, and Python is really nice at handling functions. We don't need to define the types when we send input. However, we can control the type by using an assert statement. In C++, assert statements are still useful, but we don't use them for checking the type. When I'm writing my own programs, I use assert all the time because I want to make sure that something is of type double or of type string, because I don't want to accidentally be giving a number or the wrong kind of object to a function. All right, thanks for watching the video, and keep on coding.